Welcome. Thank you for watching. I am Annie Pecor, the principal of Craneville Elementary School, and I will be facilitating a discussion on the Kona High School building project. I would like to introduce the members of our panel for this discussion.
Melissa Falkowski, Assistant Superintendent for the district.
Aaron Robb, Principal of Kona.
Hi, I'm Lori Kasdan, Superintendent for Central Berkshire.
Tom Callahan, Co-Chair of the Building Committee.
Anna Duquette, student in the district.
Jason Dion, Buildings and Grounds Manager.
Thank you. So our first question today is, 2 years ago, the voters of Central Berkshire voted by a majority of 75% to conduct a feasibility study to determine if we should renovate or if we should rebuild Kona. Could you please provide a general overview of what happened as part of the feasibility study since that vote was taken?
Sure, I can do that. So since the vote was passed last year for feasibility, the school building committee has been hard at work, and the bulk of that work has been on creating what's called a schematic design, which is what the overall building will look like. That schematic design was largely based on the visioning work that took place in the fall of this year to really get input from members across the community, from students, from parents, from staff members, from community members, about what our students will need in the future to make sure that the schematic design could meet those needs. So that was the bulk of the work in order to complete that schematic design to submit to an organization called the Mass School Building Authority that will be working with us on this project. Additionally, there have been some key votes taken by the school building committee, and in some cases as well by the school committee. Those include a vote to approve what's called the educational plan that my colleague Aaron Robb will talk a little bit more about, a vote to approve the actual schematic design, a vote to ensure that the building will be what's called LEED Silver, which is an environmentally conscious building. It's a level of environmental consciousness that the building will have. And then it's very important to note there is a vote coming up on February 14th where the actual budget of the school building project will be put forth and voted on by the school building committee in order for everything to be ready in time for the big vote, which will be on April 6th of the taxpayers of the district.
Great, thank you. Could you briefly describe who the MSBA is and what their role is in this process?
Sure, I'll take that one as well, just because it's kind of a continuation of the last question. So the Mass School Building Authority is an organization that partners with school districts really on two main things. One being accelerated repairs for things like boilers, windows, major repairs of school buildings. The other one is actually to renovate or rebuild schools that are deemed to be in necessary condition to be rebuilt or to be renovated. We have actually been applying to the Mass School Building Authority to be entered into their program for 10 years. For over 10 years when I got here, we have been submitting which is called a statement of interest, saying we think we have a need, we think that we should be eligible for your program, please consider us. And we were regularly turned down throughout that period of time. What was it now, Mr. Robb, 3 years ago? About 3 years ago, we got some very good news when we had a visit from the MSBA, and they said, yes, you absolutely have risen to the top level of need, and we are going to invite you into this process. When they invite you into the process, what they do is they partner with you financially. You do need to meet several different requirements that they put in place, but as a result of doing so, you're eligible for a % reimbursement based on the economic factors in your district. So in Central Berkshire right now, our reimbursement rate is 54.79%. What that translates into in terms of dollar figures will be about a $30 million contribution from the MSBA to this project. The funds are really a result of the sales tax in the state of Massachusetts, so we're all paying into this, and this is our opportunity as a community to receive some benefit.
Great, thank you. Could you describe the Kona Building School Committee and how it functions? So for example, who leads it? What are the subcommittees? What's the role of the subcommittees?
Take that, Annie, thank you. First, the Mass School Building Authority requires that an official school building committee be formed, and we function as the main working group and facilitator with all phases and all things pertinent to the development of a school plan, and along with the architects and construction representatives, We form and shape the plan and the information and go through the procedures that the school building authority requires of us. Sean Armacost is a co-chair. He also is co-chairman of the CBRSD School Committee, and I am co-chair. We have 25 members, constituting a range of different occupations and age groups, genders, including students, across the board. The main subcommittee we have is called the working group, and this group does the primary work that goes before the school building committee for evaluation and ultimately votes. And then that work is sent to the school building authority, and they give their input, and we go from there. We tweak it, we make it better, whatever they require.
Great, thank you, Mr. Callahan. Could you please describe the role of Skanska and DRA in the feasibility study?
Sure. Skanska is the firm that is the ROPM, the district's project manager. They have been with us from the beginning, really, and have worked with us throughout this whole process and helped to guide us through the process, help us to control costs and move us along in the process. DRA is the architectural firm that was hired to do the design of the building.
Thank you. What are the most pressing concerns about the current building that must be addressed, that need to be addressed?
Yes, thanks. There are several areas of consideration about the high school needs, substantial needs, based between mechanical needs and code compliance. Mechanically, there's the heating systems. All mechanical heating components are well beyond their useful life. Plumbing, bathroom fixtures are obsolete and require numerous repairs. Electrically, the original electrical design didn't even take into account for student access to computers and or use of computers in classrooms. Lighting is inefficient. Most of the lighting is discolored and the hallways are dark. The roofing is approaching the end of its service life, is now experiencing increased amounts of roof leaking. Window systems components are in poor condition with non-functioning or missing parts. And then the code compliance areas, sprinklers, there's no sprinkler system throughout the building. ADA compliance, building accessibility for occupants does not comply with the requirements currently. Most notably, there are inadequate accessible entries, inadequate routes throughout the building. Building staff and visitors are limited to the spaces that they can approach. Inadequate facilities for restrooms, seating, signage, and handrails. The asphalt pavement for the parking lot is deteriorated, and Title IX requirements for student access, availability through the physical education department, where they should have equal locker rooms and things of that nature.
I would just add to that from an educational point of view. Jason and I have given many tours of the building over the last year and a half, and when we're touring together, Jason ends up talking a lot about the building concerns as a physical structure, and then I always chime in and talk about how that impacts education. We have increasingly had to engage in what I would call workarounds, sometimes on a daily basis, and it impacts our day as a school day. For example, we have 2 portable classrooms, one that frequently has heating issues that we have to relocate those classes to other parts of the building, move them around throughout the day, which is highly disruptive. We also have a building that was built in 1961 that's really from the Industrial Revolution model. And the Industrial Revolution is far from over. And we're now 2 decades into the 21st century, and the way in which we're educating our students no longer fits the building as is. So not only do we have leaks and plumbing issues and heating and cooling and issues and that sort of thing, but we've also got the issue of the building no longer fitting how we teach. The building was built for kids to sit and listen for 50 minutes a period 6 times a day. That's not how we teach anymore. Students should be doing, they should be active, they should be moving. So in many cases, we're having, classes are having to do breakout sessions in the hallways, in some cases conducting experiments in the hallways, particularly with our physics classes. And there's also some inappropriate spaces, what I would consider to be inappropriate spaces for students with special needs in order to accommodate them, because when the building was constructed, there wasn't even a special needs law on the books at the time. And we teach all students now, and this building we need to find a way to have this building accommodate all students.
Thank you. As part of the feasibility study, the district is required to submit an educational plan to MSBA. Could you describe the role of that MSBA or the educational plan as it applies to the potential building project?
Myself and our science coordinator, Sean Therian, co-authored the educational plan. And as part of the MSBA process, and I think this is very, very important, the MSBA places a great deal of emphasis on the educational plan, and it's really the heart of the project. It's the thing that informs the design of the building. So it's very much an inside-out process. We don't start off talking about brick and mortar and parking lots and things of that nature. You start off by talking about how do you want to go about educating your students. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to provide a 21st century education in a 21st century building. So we want to emphasize the 21st century skills like collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking. And in order to do that, the construct of the design of the building is intended to enhance that. For example, the academic wing is intended to contain two two-story academic pods, where there will be an integration of special education and then general education spaces. They won't be separated as in older buildings. And we'll have rooms that are going to be flexibly used, where you can have breakout or collaborative spaces off to the side of the rooms. In between the rooms, we'll have pull-out or project rooms. And the whole idea is that the sharing of space and the way in which you go about scheduling it's going to be quite different from how we do it now in our building. There's a couple other things that I do want to highlight in the education plan that deviate from where we are now. One of the things that we learned about our school is that the gymnasium is undersized by state standards. We're at about 9,300 square feet. So in this new design, we're looking to have a roughly 11,000 square foot gym, plus two additional 1,500 square foot spaces, a weight training room and a open fitness area, kind of a CrossFit area. And this is going to allow us to actually be able to not only enhance what we do for physical education at our school, but also be able to accommodate our athletic teams far better than we do now. And 65% of our students are student athletes, so this building is going to be able to accommodate that far better. I think academically, one of the biggest highlights also is that right now we have 7 science teachers and only 1 lab. And what this building is going to do is we'll be able to have 5 fully stocked science classrooms that each have a lab within it. And we will be able to schedule the 7 teachers within those 5 rooms, which I think is very important, especially in this day and age, and the emphasis on STEM education in the state and across the country. There's been a lot of talk about our auditorium. Our auditorium is actually good sized, but it's in major disrepair. We're advocating for a new auditorium with 550 seats, so we can accommodate major programs, major shows, both in school and through the community. We'd be able to accommodate our entire student body plus our staff, and the space would be state-of-the-art. And that's something that we're also excited about, with new band and chorus music, vocal and instrumental music spaces around that. Another thing I think that's worth mentioning is the current Kona wasn't built with the idea of having privacy and confidentiality in mind, which is something that we're highly sensitive to in this day and age, whether it's family meetings, student support meetings, and that sort of thing. This new building would contain, down towards the front of the building, what's called the Student Support Center, where essentially you would have all of the student support, such as the assistant principal, guidance counselor, school adjustment counselor, nurse, school psychologist, would all be located in one part of the building, and students would access that part of the building through one door, as opposed to what they have to do now, which is if you're called to the assistant principal's office, you walk in his door out of the hallway and everybody knows where you're headed. Same thing for our school adjustment counselor, who's our point person on mental health. So privacy and confidentiality is another hallmark of the education plan for the new Kona.
Thank you. Ultimately, the building committee chose to pursue a new building as opposed to a renovation. Could you describe the process by which the committee arrived at that decision?
Sure. Well, one of the pieces I really want to emphasize is that we were able to get quite a bit of community input. So there were several what we call community evenings. We actually have 2 additional ones coming up on March 5th and March 7th. There will be 4 actual meetings in total to spread out amongst the towns. The times and locations are on the school website. But at the community sessions that we had earlier this year, we actually shared several different models that were possibilities for a renovation or a rebuild. And the overwhelming consensus of 13 models, eventually pared down to 4 models, eventually pared down to the one that was submitted as the schematic design, was for a rebuild. There's several reasons for that. I would say the most important reason to consider is the significant difference in the amount of time that it takes to renovate, which is about 35 months, as compared to a rebuild, which is about 18 months. We know time is money. We know the longer a project goes on with construction, we have to consider things like inflation. Additionally, we know that with something like a renovation versus a rebuild, there's a lot of non-reimbursable costs. So things like portable classrooms in order to house students during the construction. The other piece we really gave a lot of thought to was that when something goes on for a long period of time, 3 years, that's a long period of time for disruption for students. So we would essentially potentially have students going to school for 3/4 of their high school career in a construction zone. That did not fit our needs. Additionally, given the educational plan that really drives the schematic design, the rebuild fit the needs of the school district far more. The only other thing I wanted to mention about MSBA, I think it's really important for people to understand that when you partner with MSBA and they invite you into this process, when they've approved certain things, those are the things that will be voted on. So at this point, the MSBA has approved for us to vote on a schematic design for a new building. If we do not vote positively for that, there is not an opportunity to go back and vote on something else. So essentially what happens is this is kind of a one-shot deal with the MSBA. You could essentially get back into line. However, we know that a 10-year process is what it took for us to get into this process, and getting back in line after a no vote is a much more difficult process that could be even lengthier. And as Mr. Dion spoke to, in a very short time, there are quite significant needs of the current building. So ultimately what the community, the school building committee found was that the rebuild of a high school really met the educational and the logistical needs of the district best, including those that are financial in nature.
And where would the new building be placed?
So the new building will stay within the Kona property. It'll be placed on the varsity baseball field and part of the student parking lot.
And what would happen to the old building, and will that cost be reimbursable?
So the old building will be demolished after the new building is up and running, and it is reimbursable. The demolition is budgeted anticipated cost right now at about $1.15 million, reimbursable, but subject to MSBA's reimbursement thresholds.
And what is the anticipated cost of this project?
So the anticipated cost of the project has a range of between $70 million roughly and $74 million. That's the total cost, including the demolition of the building that we just spoke about. So that'll be narrowed down as we move forward in this process. But right now, estimates are at $74 million.
And what are the tax implications for the 7 towns?
So each of the 7 towns are, when we have a capital project, the debt is assessed through the capital budget, and it's assessed for each town based upon the enrollment of the students in the building that has the project at each October 1st of every year. So we have towns that have as low as 2% of the enrollment in the building in Wacona this year to up to 67%, which is the Dalton percentage of students in the building. So That is broken, the tax implications are broken out first and foremost by the percentage in there. Secondly, there's a lot of factors that go into it. The amount of construction costs, the way that we structured the bond eventually when we get to that point, which the strategy will be discussed after we receive in the bids. That'll change some of the estimated costs. And then it's broken out by the length of the bond, the percentage interest rate of the bond, the percentage of students in the building that we spoke about, as well as the real estate valuations in each town. And we'll be able to give accurate, fairly accurate numbers based upon costs as we move along the process. And we'll publish those on our website, but right now we don't have the cost to be able to say, in Beckett, you'll have X amount of dollars of per thousand tax implication. We do anticipate to have that next week when we have the initial round of costs. And again, those will be subject to change based upon bids received, length of construction. As the superintendent said, time is money. If it goes longer, costs more. If bids may come in lower than anticipated. So a lot of it is in flux, and we'll be able to adjust as we move along the process.
Thank you. What sort of impact will this have on athletics, both short and long term?
The good news is that the athletic events that take place within the building will be able to take place as long as the building's standing. And then if the new building is passed and built, we'll move the indoor athletics over into the new facility. The disruption will primarily will involve baseball or anything that happens on the varsity baseball field. Mm-hmm. So we anticipate that the varsity baseball team will have to find a new place to play for 2 seasons. It would be the year that they're actually constructing the building, and then the following year when they're actually constructing the new baseball field, which will be placed where the old building now stands. Fortunately, we do have 3 other varsity-sized diamonds in the town, at Pine Grove Park, the Legion, and also at Nessicus. So we will be able to find a way to accommodate both the varsity and JV baseball teams that way. JV soccer currently plays their season in the outfield of the varsity baseball field, so they will have to be relocated for 2 seasons as well. And the football practice field, which is wedged between the current school and the football field, will most likely end up being staff parking during the construction process. So we may have to move or alter where the football team practices, but we'll be working with our athletic director, Shannon, on that, and the coaches as well. The inconvenience of that is going to be quite minimal compared to what the gain is going to be, which is because we're going to have a smaller footprint in the new building, we're actually going to be gaining a rectangular athletic field. So for instance, it could accommodate JV soccer or lacrosse or something to that effect, and it will be situated in between the new baseball field and the current varsity soccer field. So there is a gain out of this in the end.
Thank you. So from a student's perspective, what do you think are the most exciting features of the proposed new building?
As a student who has spent all 4 years of my high school experience at Kona, looking at the new proposed building, I can only say that it's amazing. One of my favorite features is that the building is much more environmentally friendly than the current building. So we will have a good impact on our earth and environment. I will also like the proposed student commons, which will also serve as the cafeteria and lobby. It will be a place where students can relax, learn, and do group work. This will be the heart of the school, and I think that would be very nice to have something like that at our current school. Lastly, I like the idea that the classrooms in the new school are flexible and that they can serve many purposes to suit different types of teaching forms and group work if necessary. This new, modern, flexible feel will definitely improve the learning environment for students and will make it a more comfortable environment.
Thank you, Anna. Is there anything else at this point that anybody on the panel would like to add?
Yes. I would like to let everyone to know that you should come out and vote on April 6th.
Welcome. Thank you for watching. I'm Annie Pecor, the principal of Craneville Elementary School, and I am here with Jared Shannon, who is part of the Families for Wacona Advocacy Group. Jared, can you just introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about Families for Wacona?
Yes, I will. So my name is Jared Shannon. I'm a teacher in CBRSD. I'm a teacher at Wacona for the past 11 years. I'm also the athletic director at the school. And so I've gotten involved with a group we've formed, the Families for Wacona, in order to advocate for building a new school. This group represents dozens of families in our towns, from all of our towns, that are interested and invested in having a new school be built and support the Wacona Building Project fully, as the Building Committee has voted on.
Great. And who is, like you said, you mentioned who is specifically part of that advocacy group. Could you explain what the role is, what you're working on, what your goals are?
Perfect. So our group is, as I said, comprised of dozens of families, but not just families. We have people of all ages as part of our group, and the group is meant to support this project. And so in order to do that, our main mission is going to be to spread as much information as possible so that when people vote on April 6th, they're voting with factual information, they're voting with real information, they've seen plans for the building, they understand the costs, they understand the needs of the current school, they understand the educational plan that's been developed. We also want to make sure that they understand the long-term benefit of this school, the investment in our community, so that when April 6th rolls around, everybody who's voting is voting in an informed way. And we're going to do that through holding weekly meetings. We're slowly growing our email group. We're creeping up to 100 people as part of that group right now, individuals that bring more people. We're going to start having banners be visible in town. We're putting out some publications. We're going to be visible at some public events, youth events, and all kinds of other sort of events. We're going to reach out to businesses so that we can really form a large, vocal, factual campaign so that we can try to get to people's hearts and minds as to why this is an important project.
Great. Are there any specific points that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as obviously a teacher in this building, and somebody who has kids coming up, my wife also attended school in this building. There are some significant educational needs that are there, and the education plan really needs to be at the forefront of any discussion about this school, because really it's about education first. The physical facility that we have at Wacona is not geared to meet the needs of the 21st century and really for the next 60 years. And so we hope that people will be interested in taking tours. Our principal, Aaron Robb, has offered a number of tours. We are willing to offer tours. I gave one last Friday for a couple of hours to a few people, just to get that information out there so people can physically see the building. Because at the end of the day, what people, I think, when they have all the information, will realize is our education is excellent here. And our staff and our administration and our district are doing a great job of providing an excellent education. But for us to be sustainable for the next 60 years, our building needs certain improvements. There's work that needs to get done, whether it's the roof, the plumbing, the heating, the electrical. There's certain things that are just really big ticket items. And when people see the numbers, I think what they're going to see is that if the building committee were to just choose a renovation option, we're to tens of millions of dollars, $30–35 million worth of repairs. For the same price, or not quite the same price, for a little bit more money to our own taxpayers, we're going to be able to get a brand new building, and we're also going to be getting $30–35 million in aid from the state. And I think that's another important piece of the process. The state has chosen to invest in our school. They've chosen to invest in our district. They've chosen to invest $30 to $35 million because they know that this is a viable project, and they know it's an educationally responsible project, and it's a fiscally responsible project, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be willing to invest this kind of money. And so I'm hoping that the voters will see that we sort of have a choice. We can choose to vote yes and spend in the range of $40 to $44 million out of our own pockets, plus the additional $30 to $35 million the state's going to throw in to get a brand new school that'll open in the fall of 2021. If we vote no, then we're out of the program. There's no second chance at this for at least a decade. But there's an enormous amount of work that would still have to get done, and we would still have to foot that bill after the fact. And so the right path forward, in my view, and in the view of the Families for Wacona, is for us to vote yes on April 6th, and to invest in our towns, invest in our kids, invest in our future. And that's really what our main mission is.
That's great, Jared. Thank you. And how can someone get involved? I heard you mention Facebook, perhaps, Twitter.
Yep. So we have a Facebook account, Families for Wacona. We have a Twitter account, Families for Wacona. We have an Instagram account as well. I've been fielding a lot of questions on our email account, which is a Gmail address, and it's simply Wacona2021@gmail.com.
Great.
So it's Wacona2021@gmail.com.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.